Welcome to #Mindshift Talk, powered by Create Mindspace with Katrin Büßmann.
And we're living at a time where we are feeling overwhelmed. Like there's levels of engagement are down, happiness is down. There's, you're seeing this incredible increase in mental illness, depression, anxiety. And so I honestly believe these are the skills that are just absolutely critical when it comes to taking care of ourselves.
#Mindshift Talk is a gateway for a more humane, conscious future. The foundation is mindfulness. Come and explore with an open mind and heart to find beautiful ways to grow, listen, learn, connect, thrive in community and restore. Dive deeper into an innovative approach to reframe the concept of wellness itself and what it means to live a well-lived life. Welcome to our first edition of #Mindshift Talk, the platform to share, educate, and inspire. The first series is about gaining insights and acquiring tools to implement mindfulness and emotional intelligence into a corporate environment. Define challenges, determine possibilities, create opportunities. Welcome Janey Piroli to #Mindshift Talk. Janey is the VP Global Organizational Development for McCain. She has a strong passion for talent development that she cultivated during her career in big organizations. Her corporate experience spans the areas of organizational and leadership development, individual and team coaching, change leadership, and training design and development. As a former competitive athlete and a member of the Canadian women's national wrestling team, Janey learned to cultivate higher levels of mental and emotional resilience that helped her to succeed in the corporate workplace. Having dealt with the increased globalization, technological advancements, and economic pressures, she understands the very real challenges leaders face as they attempt to operate at the speed of light, while leading through greater levels of uncertainty and complexity. In 2016, she certified in the Engage program with the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute and is currently completing her certification as a mindfulness-based stress reduction MBSR trainer. Janey has since become a strong advocate for introducing mindfulness practices into the workplace and will be sharing more of her story with us today. Thank you, Janey, for being here with us today. Welcome to #Mindshift Talk. Yes, you're here with us to talk about your journey and share usable tools on how to implement mindfulness and emotional intelligence into your life and work, making one key element, or can we say foundation, on how you approach life. Would you please share a little bit about yourself and where you are today, and maybe something what people should know about you so they really get to know you better?
Sure, for sure. Thanks, Katrin. So first of all, just thank you for the warm introduction and for having me here today to speak with you. I'm just really grateful to share my story, and I always hope that it'll inspire others to do the same. But in terms of where I am today and what people should know about me, I'll share that I'm speaking to you from my living room in a small community that's outside of Toronto, Ontario, in Canada. I live here with my husband, Colin, and my American Bulldog, Fiona. And to be honest, this is the first time I'm actually introducing myself after having lost her brother, Basil. I'm just so used to saying my two four-legged fur babies. But it's part of life, and just we were really blessed to have had him for 12 years. So that is something I always like people to know about me. But from a career perspective, you mentioned that I worked in org development. I love the work I do because it largely involves making a positive impact on the lives of others. And if there's one thing that I would want you to know about me, that it's important, just being of service and making a meaningful contribution is important to me. But and then as it relates to mindfulness, I will share more of my story as we go through this session. But other thing that I hope to convey is that, I am a human being just like you, just like the others that are listening.
Yeah.
And so you're going to hear me speak to the challenges that I've had as I've moved down this path of mindfulness. And so today, yes, I'm a practitioner, but I'm also, a working professional, and I'm in the thick of it every day as well, which means that I'm still continuously working at it. But I'm grateful to maybe just be a few steps ahead that allow me to, to bring this work to others and to support the business this way. So that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you, Janey. And you had a long-standing career in the corporate world, and you then, like a while ago, you made a transition to be a leadership coach, and now you're being back in the corporate world since a couple of years. Can you talk a little bit more about your path and the decisions behind that?
Sure, for sure. So I will share with you that my path in the corporate world has not always been a linear one, and I really do think that's what's kept it sort of interesting and eventful. And I'll just give you a little bit of the story that I actually started my career as a maintenance manager in a snack food plant, working for, at the time it was called Frito-Lay Canada, eventually became PepsiCo Foods Canada. And so I had an environmental engineering degree at the time. They thought as a young female leader, I could help break some stereotypes, and they put me in the space. And although I learned a lot in those 2 years, and I have lots of stories to share about that, but I just had the opportunity to transition over to sales. That was where I met the sales training manager, and I knew right away that was a job I wanted to do.
Okay.
And that gave me the opportunity to really, I'd say, broaden my career. And I started with gaining, teacher trainer of adult certificate and HR certificate, and then eventually this executive coaching certification. And so my career continued to evolve. I moved from training and development into organizational development. And that's where I just became so passionate and really loved having the opportunity to work with leaders, coaching them, working with high potentials across the business, and all of these leadership development programs. In 2014, I was transferred to the US. So I had the opportunity to work at our region head office. It was Frito-Lay US in Plano, Texas. And then I was there for 2 years, and it was a great life experience. But now I was 19 years with the same company. And I started to get curious about what it would be like to be on the other side. So to your comment, to be a leadership coach working full time in that space. So I took the risk. I left PepsiCo. I came back to Canada, and I was working for a small company called The Round Table, loving the work. It was a peer-based group coaching. And I had the opportunity to work with various companies across different industries, was learning a lot. And so, but what I started to notice was there was still something missing. And I started to recognize that for me, I do enjoy very much being part of a larger organization, working on a fulsome strategy, making change happen over time. So after about 2 years, this opportunity came up to return to going, working on the inside of the corporate world. So I made the move to Walmart Canada. And I'll share with you that at the time, I also held this vision of being a positive shift in workplace consciousness. And I can tell you that I don't know that I understood what it meant at the time or how I was going to do it. I just held that belief or that vision. And I knew that, or believed that being on the inside of one of the largest companies in the world, that was probably a great place to start. And so that's what brought me back into the corporate world at that time.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. I think I really appreciate that you actually know both sides now. Maybe you can tell me a little bit more as well, what really led you to discover mindfulness as like a strategy more going forward?
Sure. I think here's what I'll share with you, that I've been personally practicing meditation and mindfulness for about 10 years. And what led me down the path, I'd say there's both personal and professional. And so I'll start with the professional, and I'll go back to 2010. Working with Frito-Lay Canada, we were in the process of merging 2 organizations. So Frito-Lay Canada and Quaker were becoming PepsiCo Foods Canada. And for anybody who's been through a merger or an acquisition, can attest to the fact that it's a very challenging and it's a stressful time, and it's one where many leaders are known to start demonstrating what's called derailing behavior. And sometimes it's called sort of the dark side of the personality. And I would just share I was no exception, because the truth for me is that I've been known to have more of a bright bright personality. People would describe me as positive, lively, energetic, and that's always on a good day.
Mhm.
But for me, I'd say my sort of, not so good days are sort of a little bit more difficult to hide. So I just don't have the gift of a poker face. And so when I found myself at that time sort of struggling with the workload, maybe questioning some of the difficult decisions, I just couldn't hide it. I was more sort of an emotions on the sleeve kind of person.
Mhm.
And what also made it fairly challenging was that I, in difficult conversations, was experiencing like this physiological reaction. And in like extreme situations, like I'd feel the temperature, it would rise up from my legs up to, up to my shoulders. You feel your heart racing, your thoughts become unclear. And
Mhm.
then when you go to speak, like you can feel that your words are a little shaky. And and so during those situations, here was my strategy. I just thought, I'm just going to suppress this. Like I'm going to push this down, try and hold myself, composure at the boardroom table. And quite frankly, realized it wasn't working. It was almost like you're trying to push down a geyser that's trying to, like, there's energy trying to be released.
Yeah.
And there is a saying in mindfulness around like what you resist persists. And I think I just didn't understand that at the time. And so here's the thing, I felt really disappointed when that year in my performance review, the feedback I got was that I needed to work on my resilience.
Oh,
And in
wow.
order for me to progress in my career, that was the thing. And I was disappointed because I thought I'd overcome, challenges in my life that I thought, resilience should be my middle name. Like but I got it. Like it was how others were perceiving, you know, my behavior in the moment. And that was something I needed to work on. So fortunately, this was when I was going through my coaching certification. And I had the benefit and the support of a mentor coach. Her name was Carolyn. And she was helping me with some coping strategies. And this was the first time it was suggested that I should try breathing, right? And so I was like, yeah, no problem, I can do that. I I do it all the time, sure. And the reality was I just didn't really get it, not until it was around the time I also started going to yoga. And when you're in on your yoga mat and the instructor's getting you to connect with your breath, right? And you're taking these long deep inhales, long deep exhales, and I just found I could feel myself sort of releasing and letting go, just letting go of my thoughts, letting go of the day. And I just felt myself, this idea of becoming present in the moment. And so I started to think, hey, I think this is it, this is the practice I need to take into, off the mat and into the boardroom. um, and I would say, my interest, it caught my attention, my interest has started to evolve. But I will admit, I didn't really start the practice of what it says meditation until other things started to happen. And those other things were more about what was going on in my personal life. And so while I was dealing with all these workplace challenges, at the same time, I was in a relationship with an individual who's really started to struggle from a mental health perspective. And, without going into too much detail, I'll just share that in that particular situation, it went to a very dark place very, very quickly.
Mhm.
And so that was when I found my way to a meditation cushion as another strategy to just help me manage my own thoughts, my own emotions. And it gave me the opportunity to just consciously observe sort of my experience and pay attention, because here I was observing the impact that thoughts and emotions were having on the person that I loved the most, right?
Mhm.
And just it was devastating. And then the other learning for me was I just spent a lot of time thinking about the fact that I did have mounds of compassion for this person, but I seemed to have less for myself at the time. And I sort of just put my head down and I tried harder. So at work, I just didn't want anybody to know that was going on, because there was so much going on at work. And so I tried to sort of ignore it. And then at home, I just wanted to fix it. I wanted it to be better. So there's just so much in that time of what was going on and it was over a couple of years, but it took mounds of courage in the end to make a really difficult decision. And I made the decision to leave the relationship, and would share that it was soon after. I think a lot of people thought I was crazy. I'm like, I need to take a time out. I'm going to go. And I did a 9-day solo silent retreat. So off by myself to a cabin in the woods. And I just sort of knew I needed a bit of like rest and recover. And here's what happened. When I went back to work, I realized that I felt completely different.
Mhm.
And it was like the pace of the work, the pile of the priorities, all of what was going on, none of that had changed. But how I was experiencing it was completely different. Right. And so I felt just much more calm, more peaceful. I could feel that I had more focus, that I was clearer, that even in feeling more productive and just more present. So I was like, this was an aha moment. It was like, wow, um, I think the learning for me was that we have this ability to cultivate this inner capacity to deal with these challenging things. And that usually what happens is all this stuff is going on and we're looking to the outside to fix it. And here all I did was like go and settle, kind of get settled in and on the inside and just, experience this remarkable shift. So that's really that's sort of the journey, what led me down the path and my own aha moment, because I thought I support so many leaders in the work I do in the space of leadership development. I saw them struggling with a lot of the same things. And I just wanted to help bring this work to them. And so that's really sort of both the personal and professional that sort of started this journey.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much to be being so honest and vulnerable about that stories too, because I think there's amazing, like it's a personal challenge, but then as well there's these like working environment challenges, and I think I
Mm-hmm.
can only share that idea around kind of you get almost like a helicopter vision on things, right? You're zooming
Yeah.
yourself out of everything, having a macro perspective, like without being really sucked into kind of the emotional and maybe things which are, or like politics, whatever it is, which is going
Yes.
on. In the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep, for sure.
nice. Thank you. So, um, why do you think then? I mean, you just mentioned a little bit already. Why do you think then? Why it's important for leaders to really explore these practices?
Oh, I honestly, it's like, where do I start? I think hopefully some of it came through in this story. I just believe that these are honestly life skills that we should have been learning when we were young, like in elementary school. And I think it's largely because we come equipped with this, like, these brains and minds, all these mental faculties, and we never really understand how they work or how they function. And so, but they are really designed in a way to keep us alive. Like, just fundamentally, it comes down to how they're wired. So we have this thing called this negativity bias. It's constantly on the lookout for threats in our environment. It's trying to keep us alive. So in the past, it was lions and tigers and bears. Now we know social threats, societal threats, like workplace demands. Like, there's so many things that are, and so the list goes on. And we're living at a time where we are feeling overwhelmed. Like, there's levels of engagement are down, happiness is down. There's, you're seeing this incredible increase in um, mental illness, depression, anxiety. And so I honestly believe these are the skills that are just absolutely critical when it comes to taking care of ourselves. I always think about that analogy of the oxygen mask. So whether you are a leader in business, you're a parent, you're a partner, it's like, it is so critical that you are taking care of yourself first. And so a lot of these practices help with stress management, your mental, your emotional well-being, resilience, like I spoke about earlier, your focus, your productivity, just making you more effective. And by taking care of yourself, you're better able to take care of those around you. So either the people that you're leading or the people that you love. And so that is absolutely why I think it's important. And go back to, like, I only wish we had learned these skills so long ago.
Yes, I cannot agree more on that for sure. Yes. And in your role, like your current role at McCain,
Mm-hmm.
what are you really doing around mindfulness at the workplace? Do you see specific challenges, or can you maybe even describe a shift, what you're maybe noticing in your teams when they really maybe worked through some of those trainings or practices?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, so here's what I'd share with you. I started at McCain on March 9th, and 4 days later, COVID hit.
Oh, yes.
And so it was, within a month, I had the opportunity to just share a bit of a mindfulness overview with our global HR team on one of our virtual calls. just to, acknowledge what everybody was likely feeling at the time when we were in crisis, and to give them a few tools, some practices to help manage through it. But I offered at the end of that to run a program that I actually had been running at Walmart for the last couple of years as well, which was an 8-week mindfulness and emotional intelligence program. So it's 1 hour a week for 8 weeks. And at the end of the call, I just sort of offered or invited anybody who was interested to let me know, and I'd run the program. And honestly, I literally had 60 people registered.
Oh, yes.
So there was, and to me that was new. It was a quick, the demand or the pull now was very different from what I had experienced in the past. And so I've since I've run the program, and then similarly did a presentation with our US sales organization, put the same offer out, and again had 50 people request to be part of the 8-week program. So that's been very exciting and promising, and I think it reinforces how needed it is. And what I'm what I'm noticing is this openness and desire to learn more. When you ask about the challenges, I would say what's top of mind for me then is about how to scale it across a large organization, especially a global organization like ours. So I previously had only delivered this learning in a face-to-face environment with smaller groups. And I felt it was important. I just had this mindset that it was important to keep them smaller and intimate groups. And here, suddenly had the opportunity to put it into virtual, which I kind of always questioned, would it be just as effective? But recognized it's a great opportunity. If I can do this, I can now bring it out to a larger group of people. And so we tried it. And the feedback that I got was just as impactful. So when you ask the question about what I was noticing or hearing, observing, so different in that I've not been in the office environment to observe it day to day, but what I have been hearing is the feedback, similar feedback on the impact. And a lot of it, especially right now, has been helping people to cope with the challenges of just these demands, right? Of working from home, having to, just to balance work and life, children at home, trying to put them through school while you're trying to be productive at work, and how the tools have helped people, manage their stress, improve their sleep, improve their relationships. Because when they're triggered, they're able to manage it better, recognize what might be triggering them in the moment. They're more aware of that, and they're more mindful about how they're gonna respond or react. So lots of feedback on the impact the program has had. And so what we're now in the process of doing is just stepping back to reevaluate our overall well-being strategy, where mindfulness fits within that, and then how we can bring it out to a broader audience across the organization.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I love that. I feel like this is so crucial now to really get this evidence, right? Because this is really what I'm noticing. I'm being challenged with a lot, right?
Yeah.
So it is for you really more like kind of just sharing evidence you are finding, but there's nothing really in place yet in regards to scaling it or any return of investments, like that benefits you are seeing.
Yeah. So here's what I would share, because I also, and so I'd say this, no matter what the program is, absolutely any program we're trying to introduce to business, it needs this valid business case that you want to be able to show the ROI. Um, um, I'm in a position now where we are building out our well-being, our wellness strategy, as are, I would say, many organizations, if they don't have one today. COVID has really accelerated the need for that, and bringing focus to it. Not just COVID, but so when you talk about the research or the statistics to help build that case, there is a lot of compelling statistics and research available today that I'm not sure if it was available even 5 years ago. And so it's finding your way to that information. So whether it's with the World Health Organization, World Economic Forum, to start at a higher level, because they've got some really compelling global statistics, starting with the fact the World Health Organization has declared burnout, an organizational phenomenon. So really making that link between workplace stress, right? It's just so chronic. And then the stat that I saw recently was there's 3.4 billion workers, 76% of them. So 3/4 of them report that they're really struggling with
Right.
their well-being.
Mhm.
And then even when you, and then so thinking about that financial cost of an unhealthy workforce to a business. And then the World Economic Forum, they also are sort of predicting by 2030, depression will be the leading global disease. Right. And so it's going to cost 6 trillion US dollars a year. And those are employees within your business. Right.
Right.
So there's that side of it, but then there's also the other side. So Harvard, as an example, they've done some research on the impact of wellness and well-being programs, showing that the average ROI is more than 200% of return on investments in employee health and wellness programs. So it's almost like my recommendation to anybody who's starting out would be like go source those statistics because they're out there. So to create almost that compelling case for, there's a burning platform, but there's good news. There's also these types of programs can make a positive difference. And then I think being able to translate that down to at the organization level. So then what are your own statistics around what are you seeing in terms of leaves of absence, stress leaves, and even looking at engagement scores, are those declining as well? Maybe it's turnover or retention scores or even safety. So we've even been having conversations about how to make the connection that if you bring mindfulness into a plant environment where we're tracking safety incidents, could we do a pilot where we start to show the positive, impact in that, so we lessen some of these safety incidents over time. So they do all help to support the case. In the past, in the programs that I have done, I've sort of done the more traditional before and after, sort of at the, what was the impact to you? What was your percent improvement on things like stress management, well-being, even things like sleep or your ability to productivity or focus, relationships. So those were all things that I think no matter what program, you should have those in place, but then combine them with the, positive impact to the business over time. And then there are other organizations who have been bringing this work into organizations already, like Silly, Search Inside Yourself. So
Yes.
they've got research, they've proven the impact of a program like this. And so you could also, if you haven't yet implemented, but you want to show that it's been proven elsewhere, you can get their research or other organizations that have done it and use that as well.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. I think those are really great recommendations to
mhm.
our listeners who maybe want to really start implementing more mindfulness and emotional intelligence into their work environment. So that's really, really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe just a couple of questions to end, maybe a little bit more personal in regards to
Sure.
what can you share from yourself you integrated into your life? Maybe you can even give out a little challenge towards our listeners. How we can maybe start implementing to, because what I noticed on my journey is really that in the beginning, it's really hard to even sometimes sit in silence for a minute.
Oh,
I
yes.
think that's where we a lot of times stop doing it even because we think I can't do this. So
Yeah,
yeah, maybe if you have something you could share, maybe that would really help our listeners to get
for
started.
sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And so, for me, the big aha over time was learning about the difference between meditation and mindfulness. Because like you said, I think a lot of people think they're one and the same, and they're different. Like, so the idea of meditation as a dedicated practice where you're sitting on a cushion for an extended period of time, I've heard people again in my program say like that they sometimes struggle with that, where mindfulness, I think, invites this idea of they're in the moment practices. Like they're tools that you can use in the moment, day to day, at any moment, to
Yeah.
just become more present and aware. And it makes it easier and more accessible to call on some of those. So yeah, because pausing to take a minute of mindful breathing a minute feels today like a long time, a luxury to have. So I will always say, if you can't make room for a minute, try one mindful breath, right? And start there. Because if you can remember to pause and take that one, mindful deep breath, because usually we don't realize it, we're caught doing that shallow breathing. But if you can consciously in the moment, one deep breath, you're like 99% of the way there, because you had to be conscious enough to think about, you're not on autopilot, like you took yourself out of that and you're conscious in the moment to to think about taking the deep breath. So
Yes.
I will always say, like, just try that one. Put a sticky note on your, wherever you're working, set a timer, put in your calendar. The great thing about watches today is they also remind us, but those are tools that can help. But when you asked about my practice, a favorite practice of mine, I think the one I've really gravitated towards is called noticing the good. And again, it goes back to this awareness that our brain is wired to pay more attention to the things that are, to keep us alive. So it'll pay more attention to the, things that are negative, so that we remember. I know that, like, what we need to do is counter that by noticing the good. So my go-to practice is I just intentionally take the opportunity to look around and notice, no matter if I'm in a meeting, immersed in a meeting, if it's just sort of what's good about this moment, like trying to, connect with something positive in my work environment, or when I'm out walking with the dog. It's trying to come present in the moment and really focus on the positive aspects. And I know when I do that, when I'm able to remember to do that, it just sort of fills me with a sense of gratitude and appreciation, and I always feel better for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of a practice that I love to do. But my challenge that I usually leave my participants with, or when I do a presentation, is to pick one activity that you do every day, and just try and do that with more mindful awareness. It could be brushing your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
So can you stay focused in the moment when you're brushing your teeth? Maybe you're washing the dishes, you're drinking your cup of coffee, or you're standing in line, if you're able to stand in line wherever you are in the world these days, but waiting to get your coffee or something. But it's, find something that you do every day and use that as an opportunity to be a little bit more mindful in that activity. I think it's easier to build new practices when you connect them to things you're already doing. So that would be my challenge, is find that one activity and turn it into, so you're in a mindful challenge, and do it all week, and just see what you notice, what's different about the experience over the course of the week.
Yes. Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. I'm focusing on my trainings too, is like this dedicated practice versus like in the moment practices. And I think it's so important to really understand that mindfulness is far more than just sitting in silence, closing your eyes, and you can implement that everywhere. And I love that approach as well, with the noticing the good, in regards especially to our negativity bias. So
Yeah,
thanks for sharing all that. That's awesome.
no problem.
And just to finish off, I truly believe kind of that there's only awareness really is creating change. And I really think we need a mind shift. And this is why I called this talk as well, #MindShift Talk, on really how to operate on a global level, not only in the corporate world, but as well in our personal lives. And really creating a gateway to a more humane and conscious future. And maybe you can give us your take on that, and what would be your vision for mindfulness and emotional intelligence in the corporate world, or maybe even in your personal life. But I think especially the corporate world would be a really interesting one here.
Yeah, I would just say I totally agree. Like, I think in this mindset shift that we all need to make, or on the journey of making, is the shift from a me to a we mentality, and having that perspective. And I think what it invites us to do is we just have the opportunity to shift our focus and to just think more about how we are connected to others, and how we are connected to the planet, and the decisions that we make day in and day out have incredible impacts on, our relationships with others, and like I said, on the broader, planet as well. So yeah, I am absolutely in support of your vision. Mine, I think I mentioned this earlier, was I have held this in, for about 5 or 6 years now. It's this to be a positive shift in workplace consciousness. And, now when I think about that, I recognize that mindfulness is a way to really help people become, you talked about awareness creates change. So help shift people out of autopilot, become more aware in the moment about, what's important, what are their intentions, what matters most, and cultivate, even with the emotional intelligence side, start to cultivate higher levels of empathy and higher levels of compassion, which I believe the world needs so much more of right now, right? So yeah, that's my vision. If in the work I do and in the corporate world, I would love this just to be as like every employee goes through some type of, whether it's mindfulness, it's just an integrated part of, and even like the practices integrated into the ways we work. So before a meeting starts, everybody just taking a minute to transition from getting here to being here. Let's do a breath. Let's think about what our intention is. Like, it's just, there's little ways like that we can all practice just becoming a little bit more aware and conscious in the moment. So yeah, I applaud you for the work you're doing and the vision you have to really drive this change. It's important.
Thank you. Yeah, let's work together forward on these visions. I think it's important work we need to do to really create change. And I think we could talk probably about this forever, but I think it's an amazing snapshot kind of from what you're doing already. And I can only say, keep up the great work and the practice you're doing. And thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your journey, your wisdom, and your insights. Much appreciated. Wish you all the best in the future to really create your vision and keep going on that path.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. And you as well. Thanks so much, Patricia.
This was #MindShiftTalk. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for our next episode with another amazing leader to share her journey. To learn more about Create Mindspace, check out katrinlusman.com. My gratitude goes out to my sister Tomke for bringing this to life with me.